For 18 years, a single woman lived in total isolation on a barren island in the Pacific Ocean, without tools, without community, and without any promise that another human would ever return. Abandoned in late November 1835 on San Nicolas Island, she survived relentless winds, scarce fresh water, and the crushing silence of being utterly alone. As storms erased tracks and years slipped by, she unknowingly became the last living member of her people. This is a true survival story, not about escape or rescue, but about endurance, memory, and what it takes to remain human when the world forgets you exist. She would later be called Juana Maria. The name was assigned after her rescue, drawn from the conventions of the world that finally reclaimed her. Her real name, spoken in her own language, shaped by the culture of her people, was never recorded. It vanished along with the Nicoleno tribe, erased quietly through violence, disease, and forced removal. When she was abandoned on the island in 1835, she became not just a solitary survivor, but the final living representative of an entire people. She likely did not know this at the time. What she knew with devastating clarity was that she was alone. Only 4 words and 2 songs were ever recorded from her, and the sole surviving word, Manacuana, carries no known translation. San Nicolas Island lies isolated in the Pacific Ocean, roughly 61 miles off the coast of Southern California. A long, narrow landmass, 3 miles wide and 9 miles long, shaped by wind and water rather than human intention, exposed to constant ocean gales. The island has a cool, semi-red climate with frequent fog, limited fresh water, and little natural shelter. Vegetation grows low to the ground, sculpted by wind and salt, while steep cliffs drop sharply into restless seas. Life there has always required adaptation. The surrounding waters, however, are rich, dense kelp forests sway offshore, supporting fish, shellfish, seabirds, and marine mammals. Seals haul out on the beaches. Abalone cling to rocks in the tidal zone. The island offers abundance, but only to those who understand its rhythms and its constraints. Before Europeans arrived, San Nicolas Island had supported human life for approximately 10,000 years. The Nicoleno people lived not easily but expertly, extracting sustenance from a harsh environment through accumulated knowledge passed down over generations. They fished the kelp beds, harvested abalone from tidal pools, hunted seals on the beaches, and crafted seaworthy vessels capable of navigating open ocean. Their isolation had once been a strength. It protected them. That protection collapsed in 1811 when the Russian-American company, a state-controlled fur trading enterprise, arrived with Alaskan Kodiak hunters, drawn by sea otter pelts worth enormous sums in international markets. The Russians brought violence and new diseases. The Kodiaks slaughtered most of the Nicoleno males, and the balance that had sustained the tribe for centuries collapsed within a few decades. By the early 1830s, their numbers had plummeted catastrophically, leaving fewer than 24 survivors on the entire island. In late November 1835, Spanish Franciscan missionaries decided to remove the remaining Nicoleno to the mainland. Their stated goal was protection and conversion. Their execution was careless. A single schooner named the Pure Ease Nada, meaning nothing is worse, commanded by Captain Charles Hubbard, arrived to collect the survivors, who numbered just 18 to 20 people. Accounts vary, but all agree the removal was chaotic. A storm approached. People scrambled to board the ship with what little they could carry. When the schooner finally departed, it left behind one person, and the Piorees, Nada itself, would sink off the coast of San Francisco just 1 month later, eliminating any chance of an immediate return. Whether she was overlooked, whether she jumped ashore at the last moment, whether she was searching for a missing child remains uncertain. Later stories embellished the event, but historians generally agree that the truth is unknowable. What followed is not. When the ship disappeared beyond the horizon, the woman stood alone on the island. Some accounts suggest she had a young son with her for a short time, possibly until he drowned while attempting to cross rough waters in a small canoe. After that, there would be no one left to speak to her in her own language, no one to share labor, memory, or grief. Survival under those conditions required more than luck. It required competence bordering on mastery, drawing on cultural knowledge internalized since childhood. She built shelters from materials scavenged along the shore. One structure constructed using the ribbons of a massive whale, likely beached long before her arrival. She made clothing from cormorant feathers and sealskins, carefully stitched with sinew. Eyewitnesses who encountered her later described a woman of medium height, weighing between 100 and 130 pounds, with shoulder-length hair sun-bleached to a reddish brown. Archaeological evidence confirms the care and intelligence with which these objects were made. They were not desperate improvisations, but precise solutions refined over years. Food came from the sea and the land. She harvested shellfish, caught fish, hunted birds, and took seals when circumstances allowed. She dried meat in the wind to preserve it and timed her, gathering to tides and seasons, water scarce. On the island was collected from rainfall in natural rock, basins or stored in watertight baskets of her own making, one of which was later donated to the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco. She learned through repetition and attention exactly how much she needed and how little she could waste. The physical labor was relentless, but the greater threat may have been psychological. Complete isolation is a form of pressure, rarely encountered in the modern world. Without feedback from others, without shared language or social reinforcement, the mind begins to fold inward. She endured. Evidence suggests she sang regularly songs from her culture preserved through memory alone. A UCLA linguistic study by Pamela Monroe, analyzing the words and melodies later recorded from her, concluded that her language bore the closest resemblance to those of the Lusaco people of northern San Diego County. She spoke aloud, possibly to animals or spirits, possibly to herself, maintaining identity when no one else could reflect it back. Years passed. Storms battered the island. Bones whitened in the sun. Shelters were rebuilt, tools refined, and the seasons repeated themselves again and again. On the mainland, the Nicoleno survivors who had reached the missions died of disease within just a few years of relocation. No rescue party came. No ship altered course to investigate. Unknowingly, the woman became the last living archive of her people's language, stories, and way of life. Father Jose Gonzalez Rubio of the Santa Barbara mission had reportedly offered rewards for anyone who could locate her, but every attempt failed. In 1853, nearly 2 decades after her abandonment, Captain George Nadeva, a Santa Barbara sea otter hunter, organized his 3rd expedition to San Nicolas Island after years of failed attempts. On his final night there, one of his crew members, Carl Dittman, found small, bare human footprints on the beach and strips of seal blubber leapt out to dry. Only then did they see her. She had been watching them, silent, cautious. When she approached, she carried roasted wild onions, an offering, a message that required no translation. After 18 years of solitude, she chose to leave. She was taken to Santa Barbara, into a world louder and denser than anything she had known for nearly 2 decades. Communication was nearly impossible. Not even Chumash speakers or Tongva people summoned from Santa Catalina Island could understand her. She displayed curiosity without fear and calm without resentment. She spent much of her time on the back porch of the Nedova family home, gazing at the sea. She received many visitors, purportedly loved horses, and was fascinated by her new. She did not speak of suffering. She did not perform trauma. Her body, however, faltered. Within weeks, she became ill. Accustomed to a narrow, protein-heavy diet, her digestive system could not tolerate the abundance she was offered, and dysentery overwhelmed her within 7 weeks of her arrival on the mainland. The irony is difficult to ignore. She survived 18 years alone in a hostile environment, only to perish shortly after returning to human society. Her resilience, forged through deprivation and adaptation, left her vulnerable to the sudden excess of civilization before her death. The woman was formally baptized by a Franciscan priest and given the Spanish name Juana Maria, the only name by which history now knows her. When she died on October 19, 1853, she was laid to rest in an unmarked grave at the Santa Barbara Mission Cemetery. A brief entry in the mission burial records, signed by Father Jose Maria de Jesus Gonzalez, noted only that she was the native woman brought from San Nicolas Island, baptized conditionally before death. For decades, her resting place went unmarked. It was not until 1928 that the Daughters of the American Revolution installed a memorial plaque at the site, an attempt to acknowledge a life that had passed largely unnoticed by history. The physical traces of her survival did not fare much better. Several items recovered from San Nicolas, island water containers, clothing, bone needles, and other tools she had crafted by hand, were once held in museum collections, but many were destroyed in the 1906 San Francisco earthquake and the fires that followed. Her cormorant feather dress, a sleeveless, ankle-length garment stitched with a sinew belt, was reportedly sent overseas and vanished from all records. Decades of archaeological searching finally located what is believed to be her cave dwelling in 2012. After over 20 years of failed attempts, decades later, her story resurfaced through literature. Scott Odell's 1960 novel, Island of the Blue Dolphins, which won the Newbery Medal in 1961 and is still assigned to schoolchildren today, introduced a fictionalized version of her survival to generations of readers. Archaeologists later confirmed many elements of her story through material evidence: whalebone structures, stone tools. Food remains proof that she had lived, not as myth, but as a human being solving practical problems day after day. Her story endures because it resists comfort. It is not a triumphal narrative. It does not reward negligence with redemption. It asks unsettling questions about abandonment, colonial violence, and the fragility of cultural memory, and it offers no explanations, only facts, silence, and survival. She did not seek isolation. It was forced upon her. That she endured says less about heroism than about refusal, the refusal to lie down and disappear, simply because the world stopped looking. For 18 years, she chose to live, and that choice, made repeatedly without witnesses, remains one of the most compelling acts of human resilience ever recorded. If stories like this move you, challenge you, or make you see the world differently, consider supporting the channel. Like the video, subscribe, and join us for more true stories of survival, resilience, and the extraordinary limits of the human spirit.